Good afternoon. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. Welcome. I'm Rick Holmgren. I'm the president of the parish board here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Meadville. And before we start on today's things, I thought we might all take a moment and put our phones in the sacred silent position, and any other noisemakers that you might have. And I guess I should also just let everyone know at this moment there are two exits from the building. There's the doors you came in. There's another set of exit over here. This one has stairs on it. That one, there's a ramp that goes out. So if we need to leave the building for any reason, we have these two exits. So at this time, it's our pleasure to welcome the members of the veterans of the Vietnam War, post-52, who will present colors to open today's ceremony. And as part of that ceremony, they'll bring the flags up and then salute the flags. And we ask that you rise when they say that, and then rise as they bring the flags up, and then stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would, after that, while they're saluting. So we all good? If you'd please rise and.
Those colors. Step back. Present arms.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Two. About the face. Forward.
I invite you to please remain standing for our invocation. Let us pray. Holy God, as we gather today to launch a year-long historic celebration, we invoke your continued blessings on our Meadville community as you have blessed us through the years. We gather as church leaders and members, elected officials, and community members to commemorate the founding of 3 congregations as well as other notable events in our history. We invoke with pride the legacy of our pioneer ancestors and give thanks for the vision they had of what this young community on the Western frontier could be, and for the community leaders from throughout the years who sustained these institutions through wars, economic downturns, and other challenges. We humbly acknowledge that everything we have inherited and whatever we do going forward builds upon their faithful work. May this year inspire in us a new appreciation of those ancestors and the long history that makes Meadville such a distinctive community. May you continue to bless us as we envision what our future contributions might be into our 3rd century. May it be so. Amen. You may be seated.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you all again, and especially we have some art students here from the senior high school who have a show in the parlor next door that you can see during our reception. I hope you'll come over for that. So we welcome these students and their families. We welcome the representatives of our state and local government, the veterans of post number 52, and there's the generous individuals. A number of people are participating in this year's program set of events, and I welcome to all of those folks who are here who will be doing some of that. And of course, we're glad to see a few members of our local media here to see what this is all about. Before we get into the main part of the program, I wanted to just say a few words about this building that we're sitting in, which this building was built in 1835-36, about the same time as Bentley Hall, actually at the same time as Bentley Hall up on campus. This building is relatively unchanged from the way it was built. It looked very much like this when it was created. The walls were a light gray, which is essentially what we have now. It did not have, you may not be surprised, no, there was no electricity at that time, so there were no electric lights. What we had instead was a chandelier that had whale oil lamps in it, and then lamps hanging along the sides as well. So the other thing that we've added, there was no heat in the building, other than there were 2 wood stoves at the back, right, which on a day like today would not have been able to provide much heat. And the other notable feature is the 2 wood stoves were at the back. There was only one exit, and it was also at the back. This door was added just a few, 25 years or so ago as a way to get out of the building should there need to be. So thankfully, there were no fires during services when they had those wood stoves going. It would have been quite an event. The other thing about this building that you may know, the pews that you're sitting in, these box pews, are original actually the benches are a little different. What I've read is that the benches originally were about 5 inches higher and about 2 to 3 inches narrower, and were reputed to be tremendously uncomfortable. They were changed sometime late in the 19th century. I assume that's to keep people awake during what were then very long sermons. So the reason they're constructed the way they are with the doors is because there was no heat. People would sit in the pews in the wintertime, and they would bring in a warmer, usually something filled with coals or hot stones or bricks or something, and they would shut the doors to keep the heat in and put a blanket over their laps so it would keep them, at least their lower halves, somewhat warm. So that's the function of the box pews. The other function made it they were actually auctioned off to help pay for the business. You had to pay, you subscribed to a pew, and so this was your pew, and you had to, you paid annually to keep your pew. So that was common in churches of that time. So they had 2 functions, both to stay warm and to raise revenue for the church. The other thing you'll notice about this building is that when it was built, there was no public sewer and there was no running water, and there is still no public sewer and there's no running water. So if you need to use the restrooms, the parish house next door has restrooms. We do not have any in the building. So please be aware, we don't have any water or sewer in the building still to this day. After the ceremony, we will have a reception next door in the parish house. Please join us if you can. There'll be and view the students' artwork, which is they have a series of pie plates made after the fashion of the time. So I encourage you to come over for that. At 3 o'clock every Saturday, we serve in the parish house soup to those who want, and I encourage you to stay for that. It's open to anyone. There's no charge for it, though, of course, donations are very welcome. So why Meadville 1825? So a couple of things, and Tom will tell us a lot more about this later, but a few things just to note about Meadville in 1825. Meadville was a thriving metropolis of about 850 people, which is about the size of Sagertown. In 1825, there was only one church holding services regularly. That was First Presbyterian Church in the same location they are now on Liberty Street. But in 1825, 3 churches were founded. The county decided to build a permanent courthouse. The college was building a new main building on campus. There was a lot happening now that would consider community formation. And so the question is, what was happening in 1825? What made people decide in that moment that now was the time to really put down roots and create those things that signify community, a lasting community, a community that will still be here in 200 years? And so that's really what we're going to explore this year through a series of events, and I hope you'll visit with us. It's also interesting to remember that in 1825, this was the western frontier. According to writings from the time, it took approximately 5 days to get to New York City. That's one way, right? 5 days. 6 days to get to Philadelphia. So it was remote. We were not anywhere close to other things. The town was, as I said, about 850. To give you a sense, that's about the size of Sagertown, right? And a lot of the things that we think of as normal for the town didn't exist at that time. For example, the diamond, there was, I don't think, a single thing growing in the diamond. It was just a big mud hole mostly, because that's where they parked the horses, right? And there was a beautiful wrought iron fence in front of the building, which was beautiful, but it also kept the horses out of the yard, right? So these are the kinds of different, lots have changed over the time, the intervening 200 years. So we hope you'll come back to find out more about what was for the future events, more about what was happening in 1825. And you should have gotten a one-page program with all the events, a one-page sheet with all the events in your program. If you want to find out more, you can also follow us on Facebook, something else I didn't have in 1825, Meadville 1825 on Facebook, and there'll be updates there. There's almost certainly likely to be a few changes, so if you follow us, you'll see those. We'd like to thank our donors, in particular the Crawford County Heritage Foundation, which provided the funds to help get this whole thing started. And of course, additional donations to fund it going on would be welcome, because all events are free to the public. And so, yeah. So I think that's enough from me. Jane Ellen?
We are very grateful today to have some of our elected officials and their delegates with us. It has turned out to be a busy weekend, and several of the folks who had hoped to be with us had unavoidable conflicts. So first, I'd like to introduce, on behalf of Senator Michelle Brooks, who represents Pennsylvania's 50th District, we welcome from her office Mrs. Julie Hecker, Legislative Aide. Julie.
Senator Brooks sends her regrets today for not being able to join us here in person, but I'm truly honored to get to learn so much more about my home county, Crawford County, through these events this year, and it's an honor to be here. The first thing that I have today is actually a certificate of recognition for the Meadville 1825 Committee for putting all of this together. These things don't just happen. I'm sure all of us in this room recognize that, but sometimes it's kind of overlooked, all the little pieces that come together to make such an event. In the course of preparing for today and learning about your events, I've been in contact many times with Dr. Armindia Dixon. And if she is in the room, I wonder if she would come up so that I can give her this certificate. I'll come down the steps so she doesn't have to. It's been my pleasure to get to know you a little bit these last 2 years, and thank you for investing in our community. And on behalf of Senator Brooks,
Thank you.
thank you. And then also, in celebration of this church's 200th anniversary, Senator Brooks had a Senate citation prepared and sent a personalized letter that I'd like to read for you. And I apologize for the misspelling of your name. I will get it corrected, and I'll get you a new copy, okay? Dear Minister Nick Holgren, church family, 1825 celebrants and guests, congratulations on your 200th anniversary. It is truly exciting to see the many occasions which will be celebrated this year for their bicentennials, each having made a significant mark upon generations of Crawford Countians. In addition to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Meadville, we will mark the celebrations of Christ Episcopal Church and Stone United Methodist Church. What a spiritually rich history for our citizens to recognize in 2025. As this particular membership moves forward into the next decades, may your work continue to meet the needs of the people around you, to make Meadville and the surrounding areas even stronger places to grow up, raise a family, and retire in. Please accept this Senate citation and add my congratulations to the others you have undoubtedly received. Warm regards, Michelle Brooks.
Next, Commissioner Seeley and the other county commissioners are all in Harrisburg today. But representing them and sharing a proclamation is Mr. Joe Galbo, Chief Tax Assessor for Crawford County.
On behalf of Crawford County, I bring greetings from the commissioners on the occasion of this bicentennial celebration of our shared history and heritage. They send their regrets for not being able to attend themselves, as previous commitments across the broad expanse of the state have led them somewhere else. They send to you instead one of the longest tenured staffers currently in their employ, and according to local attorney Brian Polito, an actual attendee of the groundbreaking for the second courthouse structure. Could be, there's so many things I've forgotten over the years. A journal published by the county in 1954 in commemoration of the renovation of a second structure built at the site has this to say about the initial structure erected at the site here across the diamond. In 1824, construction of a new courthouse was started on the east side of the diamond, located on the north half of the present site, and was completed in 1828. It was a long brick building with Doric temple front consisting of 4 columns and surmounted by a circular belfry. It was a 2-story building, the county offices being in the front and the courtroom at the rear of the offices. In 1833, an 800-pound bell was purchased and hung in the belfry, which, when rung, could be heard at a distance of 7 miles. This building was used until 1867, when it was removed to make room for the courthouse all of us have known over the immediate past years. And during the construction period, the courts were held in the Richmond block on Chestnut Street, where Montgomery Ward's stands, and now, of course, is a fitness place and Diamond Grill restaurant and a lot of other good things. This courthouse was started in the fall of 1867, completed 2 years later, and served the county for 85 years, and it was dedicated in January 6, 1870. Nearly 40 years for a structure was a pretty good track record for that time. We've had malls in the present age that didn't hit that landmark. But times change. Needs change for structures. In real estate, however, the 3 most important factors, of course, are location, location, location. This spot, this location where we assemble, could be considered the cradle of our civilization. The place for 200 years where we have gathered to trade, create, worship, congregate, resolve differences, preserve a past, maintain a present, and build a future. We stand on the shoulders of those that did the best they could to achieve irrelevance here for at least another year, month, week, or day. Some did better than others, some worse, and most the best that they could. It continues to be a work in progress to this day. For those that say so much needs to be made right now, perhaps a glance backward may comprehend from whence we came and the labors to achieve even this current imperfection. Maybe the lessons to be learned from the perseverance of the past is the promise of each new day that presents itself. To honor and learn from the past and embrace the change and innovation of the future. If there is any covenant we hold as citizens of this hallowed ground, it's this: leave it and its citizens a little better off than you found it. And now, on behalf of the commissioners, I bring you this proclamation. Whereas the year 1825 marked a period of staggering population growth and economic prosperity for Meadville area, while still relatively new community, and whereas the congregations comprising of Christ Episcopal, Unitarian Universalist, and Stone United Methodist churches endeavored to establish new structures, which subsequently stand as their respective permanent homes today. And whereas Crawford County constructed a new courthouse on Diamond Park to house the county's judicial and administrative operations. And whereas a partnership of organizations, churches, nonprofits, and business entities has coalesced into the newly established Meadville 1825 to celebrate and commemorate this notable anniversary through public education services, artistic events, and a multitude of initiatives to highlight the long-established community assets of the Meadville area. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that we, the undersigned commissioners of Crawford County, do hereby recognize, welcome the efforts of Meadville 1825 on behalf of the citizens of Crawford County, that we commend and laud their leadership on this year's programming, and that we look forward to serve as partners and supporters throughout the upcoming celebration, the Crawford County Board of Commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Galbo. Next, I want to invite Dr. Jennifer A. Galden, Superintendent of Schools for Crawford Central District, to bring us remarks.
Good afternoon. I'd like to first thank Dr. Dixon for inviting me to speak in front of you here today before we get on with our program. Today, we gather to celebrate a truly remarkable milestone, our Meadville community's bicentennial. For 200 years, this city has been a home, a foundation, and a source of strength for generations. Today, we observe our shared history and look ahead to the future we are building together. This celebration is more than a recognition of the past. It's a call to action for the present. It reminds us of the power we have as a united community to foster change, uplift our schools, ensure that every child is empowered to succeed. It's also an invitation to deepen our commitment to one another and to the values that we make us strong. We are resilient, compassionate, and progressing. As we celebrate the heritage that shaped us, let us also recognize our responsibility to preserve it for the generations to come. Our history is not just a collection of dates and events. It is the story of the people who believed in the power of community, who built with vision, and who dreamed boldly. It's now our turn to be the stewards of that legacy. So together, we can honor the past by investing in our future, supporting our schools, revitalizing our neighborhoods, and ensuring that this community continues to be a place where everyone feels proud to belong. I would also like to acknowledge Mr. Jacob McCoy, our art teacher at Meadville High School, and his students in ceramics, who worked very hard to create a display for us today that showcases an artistic and practical side of our history. I hope that everybody after this will go over and see the hard work that our students have done. Thank you for being a part of this celebration and for joining in the spirit of unity, hope, and progress.
I'd now like to introduce Mary Ann Manano, Meadville City Manager, to bring greetings and a proclamation on behalf of Mayor Jamie Kinder, who was also called out of town this weekend.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the City of Meadville, Mayor Kinder, and City Council, I'd like to welcome and thank everybody to celebrate today the launch of what will prove to be an extraordinary year full of celebrating, learning, and remembering all the events and milestones that took place in 1825 to help shape the community and what it is today. Mayor Kinder is saddened that she could not be here today, but she sends her love, support, and well wishes. She also asked me to read a proclamation honoring this event. So whereas in the year 1825, Meadville experienced a period of rapid change and growth, shaping the foundation of the vibrant and dynamic community we are all proud to call home today. And whereas the events of 1825 had a lasting impact on the development of our county, influencing not only the physical landscape, but also the culture, economy, and spirit of our community. And whereas the Meadville 1825 initiative has been established to commemorate and celebrate these significant historical milestones, providing an opportunity for reflection, learning, and connection throughout the year. And whereas this year-long celebration will offer exciting programming to engage and educate residents and visitors alike, helping to preserve and share the rich history of Meadville for future generations. We acknowledge and thank the dedicated members of the Meadville 1825 Committee for their tireless efforts in organizing this event, Tom Edmonds for his leadership and vision, Dr. Dixon for her ongoing commitment to preserving the history and legacy of our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved, on behalf of City Council, I do by here proclaim the launch of the Meadville 1825 celebration. Thank you.
Now we have a special treat. Sandy Ball, who was a fairly recent member to our Meadville community and the Unitarian Church, has written a song to celebrate this bicentennial. She will now perform it at the piano with vocalist Amy Reish, who is our music director here at the Unitarian Church. And if you'd like to follow along, the lyrics to the song are on the back of your program. You won't be expected to sing, but you can just follow along.
Old French Creek, rolling hills, became a site for hopeful dream. Meadville is that hometown, that's our Meadville. Early settlers put their roots down and built a college on the hill. Then Diamond Park, Market House, their righteous vision to fulfill. As time went on, more people came. Our Meadville saw its fortunes rise. There was farming, then came factories, including tool and die. Our resilience and courage and love of our neighbors who always are ready to help led us here today. And we celebrate 200 years when 3 churches were founded and businesses flourished to set us on our way. Meadville, Chestnut Street to Park Avenue, Meadville, you inspire us still, it's true. Here's to the future of our Meadville.
Thank you, that was terrific. And now it's my pleasure, great pleasure, to introduce Tom Edmonds, who is going to tell us all about 1825 in just a few minutes. And the thing I really want you to know about Tom is that this whole thing wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for Tom. The original idea came from him to kind of, maybe we should put some stuff together. And it turned out to be a lot of stuff. It'll be a really interesting year. So thank you, Tom, for getting us going. So, Tom.
We have to put coordinates here. So I'm taking this up, and now you're going to go, and then you're going to hand it to me. Okay, great. We rehearsed it so many times, and I can't remember. And I claim to be an historian. Think of that. I have an old laptop here, so this may need to warm up a little bit. But I will introduce myself while the electronics get going. How presumptuous of me to talk about Meadville history when I've only lived here for 18 months. You guys already trump me as a group, but thank you for coming to this grand opening. We have many people to thank for this year-long calendar, especially Dr. Dixon, who was able to steer a lot of the activities and events that we're going to be producing this year. As Rick said, I'm Tom Edmonds. My wife and I moved to Meadville 18 months ago. After 35 years of working in museums and history museums along the East Coast, my wife and I decided to come to Meadville to start a new life. We had previously lived in New York State. As soon as I got here, I had to come into this building. This Greek revival temple attracted me, and maybe, sorry Mary Beth, one of the reasons I moved to Meadville just was to get inside this beautiful building that Rick so aptly described historically. So thanks, Rick, for doing that. As soon as I got here, the 200th celebration committee was starting. I was asked to be on that committee, and which I'm really glad I got to do, because I got to know so many people here in the community and learn about Meadville and Crawford County. Last year I was offered a job at Gannon University in Erie, so I'm also teaching now the history of art and the history of architecture. But look at this church. Isn't it beautiful? Isn't this gorgeous? I'm just so happy to be up here at the pulpit. Normally I'm sitting over there where Rich Chafee is sitting. Using my experience as a grant writer and educator, I helped Rick write a grant to restore Parish Hall, which you're going to see at the reception. Just a small part of it has been restored. And I wrote another grant to celebrate the 200th anniversary with having a year-long list of activities I thought would make the original Pennsylvania Historic Commission grant sexy. So now we have to carry this out. We got the money from Pennsylvania, and many thanks, as Rick said, to the Crawford County Heritage Foundation for making this year-long calendar of events possible. Meadville is a gem. My wife, Mary Beth, and my sisters, Deborah and Janet, have also found a home here. So thank you, Meadville. So let's start. Are we ready? Maybe I'm not ready. Okay, there's a... This is good practice for me because I start teaching next Tuesday. Okay, there's our logo, which was designed by Bull Moose Marketing, who has been helping us a lot with this project. I am not going to be talking about the early families of Meadville. There are so many, and it's covered much better in this History of Crawford County, which was published in 1885. It's illustrated. You can see those drawings based on photograph of the Wade family, W-A-I-D, who lived in Woodcock. He had a sawmill for a while, but they had a farm and an extended family. That's just some of the minutia in this wonderful book that's over 1,000 pages. So anybody that's interested in family genealogy needs to see this source, and it's available online. You can see it for free. Go to Internet Archive, do a Google search, or archive.org. Okay, let's start at the beginning. 2.5 million years ago, woolly mammoths roamed Crawford County. Yes, they did. Most of you probably know that, but I was delighted to find that out. They became extinct 4,000 years ago because of a warming climate and probably overhunting by the hunter-gatherers who were here. We don't know what they were called, but they know we found evidence. Here are the mammoth bones that were pulled out of Nye's Marina in 1958. They can be seen at the wonderful Conneaut Lake Historical Society. That is one of the most beautiful museums, and I've worked in a lot, and I've been to a lot. I've never had so much fun as a museum professional going to the Conneaut Lake Historical Society, so please go. Pennsylvania was inhabited by Native Americans beginning, we think, 16,000 years ago. Now, a lot of these numbers are made up by academics like myself, so anything that we prehistory is a little suspect. By 1600, the Erie tribe covered parts of Erie, Crawford, and Warren counties. Archaeologists have found prehistoric village sites very nearby. There's burial mounds in Wilson Chute, which is next to the Ernst Seed Farm, and the McFate Farm in Cochranton. Is also, it was dug up several decades ago and then reburied, so to preserve it as a site. But these are very, very early Native American sites that are around us. During the entire 17th century, the Beaver Wars involved the Iroquois, Dutch, French, and English settlers over the lucrative beaver pelt trade. The smaller Erie tribe was destroyed by the Iroquois, who had guns supplied by the Dutch and the French. The purchase of 1784, which was between the Iroquois, sometimes called the Five Nations, sometimes called the Six Nations, I'm calling them the Iroquois, and the United States, it was a treaty that called for land in northwest Pennsylvania to be surveyed and given to revolutionary soldiers in New England, because the value of the US dollar was worthless at the time. The revolutionary soldiers quickly sold their property. Instead of moving, they just sold it to land speculators here. But the treaty recognized the Iroquois as sovereign nations and promised to protect them. They did not. Here is the map of the purchase of 1784. You can see Crawford County up there, and it was a very, very big purchase. So again, a lot of the boundary lines for communities and the county borders are still in place from that 1700s treaty. In 1788, David Meade and 9 pioneers set up camp on Mill Run, which would eventually become Meadville. This is a great drawing. Unfortunately, Josh Sheretz can't be here. I was hoping to ask him where this is. Does anybody know where this drawing is? I found it on the internet. It shows David Meade's log cabin, and to the right of that is an outbuilding, but what's so interesting is that black spot in the middle. It was the blockhouse that was here in town. This is a replica. No, I'm sorry, it's not a replica. This is an existing century house in Nova Scotia that's been preserved and restored. So to me, this is what it looked like. Alfred Heidi Coper, that's how you say Heidi Coper, not Heidi Cooper. Several of us here had the pleasure of meeting Peter Heidi Coper from Colorado a couple months ago, and he corrected me and everybody else he could find. You say Heidi Coper. You got that? There'll be a quiz. So this was to protect the inhabitants of Meadville. A second-story sentry box was on top with 1 cannon. The second floor projected over the first floor. And it remained standing, which was just above Water Street until 1828, when it was destroyed for civic improvement. Most people lived in log cabins up until 1825. And again, I'm going to be talking about the social history, something that is sort of my area of expertise about the 1820s. But people lived in log cabins, and this is a beautiful illustration showing that. Meadville was a big open field, actually. It wasn't forested in the beginning. It was probably cleared by Native Americans to plant. But there were forests surrounding it, which made it easy to build a home. By the 1820s, most of Meadville was starting to convert to this late colonial, early federal-style house made of wood frame with clapboard. It looks very much like New England. If you want to date a house, look at the window panes up there. There's 12 panes on top of 12 panes. So one way to date a really early house in America is 12 over 12 windows. So this is the Dixon Tavern. Has anybody seen this? It's at the hospital in Erie. It's isolated there. It's surrounded by these monstrous parking lots, but thank goodness, thanks to Jeff Kidder, architect, it's been preserved. Jeff Kidder restored it in 2009. Here's a wonderful illustration of what it would look like inside. This is a painting called The Country Wedding. It was painted in 1820. But this is how people lived. You can see the couple there getting married. I want you to look above the couple. There's a birdhouse. Every kitchen or house had a bird cage with finches or starlings or something like that to keep the room alive. And one thing I've noticed in the 1820s, there's always a bird cage in a room. Here's a map of Meadville, Pennsylvania, in 1800 that was updated in 6 years later. And if you look at the bottom left, you can see Harm Jan Heidi Coper's purchase in 1806, which is on what used to be the Indian Trail and is now known as Water Street. The census were marked up. My numbers here are the Crawford counties, not Meadville, as Rick mentioned before. But in 30 years' time, or 25 years, the county experienced 550% growth. And that's huge. People came by any means possible. That illustration above there shows how a lot of people got here by walking and carrying their goods. From my readings, I read a lot of people from the Lehigh Valley in eastern Pennsylvania settled in Meadville, along with a lot of other European immigrants. This was a great find. I was looking for an illustration of Heidi Coper's house, which is, like I said, was on the Indian Trail, which is now Water Street. So if you look at the main house, he purchased the property in 1806. He married that same year, and then he built a house, and then it expanded. If you look behind, there looks like a brick structure. That was his office. That was maybe the second or third Holland Land Company office. So he didn't have a commute. Lucky him. James Audubon came to Meadville on August 28, 1824. He was a young man. He had been traveling all over Pennsylvania. He stayed on a farm someplace around Pittsburgh. I forget the name of it. Maybe called the John Audubon Center. But his famous book, Birds of America, which was published in 1838, shows the Pennsylvania state bird, the ruffled grouse. How many people know this is the Pennsylvania state bird? Not bad. All right. That's good. When he came here, he stayed 2 days. He stayed at a tavern, and he was trying to make money, so he did a lot of portraits. He did some drawings of local people, and I think there's one in the Crawford County Historical Society. But his 2 or 3 page story about Meadville is very interesting, and again, you can find this online. If you were rich, you made a 4-horse mail and passenger stagecoach your means of transportation. It came to Meadville, the stagecoach came to Meadville in 1820, which linked Erie to Pittsburgh. It took 16 hours and cost $3, which was a lot of money back then. The Azalea House on North Street was a stagecoach stop. Does anybody know the Azalea House? Has anybody seen it? Good. We need to preserve that building. Most people walked, though, or they rode horseback along the Venego Path, which was a Native American trail that, again, connects Erie to Pittsburgh. Audubon, in his 2 or 3 page booklet, said that he walked from Meadville to Pittsburgh in 2 days. I don't know. If you write something, you can say anything you want, but I think he got a ride on that wagon. This was a great illustration of Heidi Coper's carriage, which, according to his biography written by Frances Tiffany, was the carriage was purchased in 1812, I guess. This photograph is probably 1890s, but you can see how very rich people traveled. Again, this was probably not that comfortable. President James Madison asked the Marquis de Lafayette to visit the United States in 24 to honor his old friend and revolutionary hero. His farewell tour of the United States takes place from July 1824 to September the following year. Lafayette's influence was used by Madison to promote the ideals of liberty and democracy throughout the country. And then you can see the map here. He lands in New York City and he goes south. It looks like he takes a little side trip over there. And he goes up and down, follow the white dots. He circles around South Carolina, goes through Georgia. You can't see on the map. He ends up in New Orleans, and then he works his way up the Mississippi River, going up to Illinois, and then coming up the Ohio River to probably Pittsburgh, and then to Meadville. So this was one of the most exciting events of 1825. I did a deep dive, and there wasn't much going on that was recorded. That's the great thing about today. Everything's recorded. The presidential election of 1824 was a big problem, just like our recent one. It lasted over 1 month. Andrew Jackson, John Quincy Adams, Henry Clay, and William Crawford of New York State are the primary candidates. The result is inconclusive. No candidate wins a majority of the Electoral College. John Quincy Adams is elected by the House of Representatives in February of 1825. He becomes president. No one is happy about that. He's not a good president, but he was a great Secretary of State. He just wasn't a good politician. The Conestoga wagon was a big deal in 1825. It was invented in eastern Pennsylvania by some German immigrants to take their goods to market in Philadelphia in 1750. They were very popular because of the curved wagon bed. Look at the bottom here. All the weight of the wagon was centered in the middle of that and didn't shift forward or backward that much. And you can see the sort of the gates of the wagon would hold things in. They were used extensively by farmers and pioneers going west until the railroads became popular in the 1850s. They were so tipsy that most people walked along beside it. You didn't want to ride in it. How many people remember the Kennedy Bridge? This is now the Mercer Street Bridge. But the covered bridges were very popular. Again, they started in Philadelphia in 1805 and became very popular by 1825. I have no date for the Kennedy covered bridge. But it was probably built at this time because there was an accident on a ferry that used to cross the French Creek. So the Kennedy family built this bridge, and they charged. So if you wanted to go over it, you had to pay. But it was replaced in 1890 by a truss bridge, which looks very much like the blue bridge that's there now. I'm not sure about that. But think of this covered bridge and having to pay a toll going over the Mercer Street Bridge now. This has nothing to do with Meadville, but to me, it looks like Meadville would have looked like back in 1825. There's a Conestoga wagon in front of a tavern. It's cut off, but there's a bridge going over a creek that reminds me of Mill Creek. This could have been Chestnut Street back in 1825. And you can see farmers are taking their animals to market and away from market. There's children playing. There's people on the porch. To me, this looks like village life in 1825. And I did find a fact. In 1825, the Harrington Circus comes to Meadville. How did people spend their time? You had to work hard. You had to make your own clothes. You had to grow your own food. But you needed entertainment. So anything that would be a diversion would be welcome. So the Harrington Circus comes to Torbett's Tavern on Water Street. Frederick Heidi Cooper wrote about his childhood here in Meadville, and he mentions a traveling animal show that he saw as a young boy. And a couple days ago, somebody said, and we're looking at an illustration of bears, probably dancing bears. This looks nice, but there used to be bear wrestling, and somebody here saw a wrestling match between a man and a bear in the 1970s. You and you? Okay, so that's true. Let's bring it back. I want to see bear wrestling. Pantomime was popular. People got together in their homes and they would wear silly clothes. They would act out children's nursery rhymes. The pantomime horse was one of the favorites. And if you look, this is one guy in a horse costume, and you can imagine how crazy you would act because you can't see well. But sometimes there were two people in it. You've probably seen those on old Ed Sullivan shows or something. This is a fascinating illustration. Lewis Miller recorded rural life in Pennsylvania. He lived in eastern Pennsylvania, and he recorded, he made drawings and he wrote about life in rural Pennsylvania in around 1820s. Here's an illustration of him, and we can see the artist in the back with a top hat, and he's got strawberries in his hand. He's walking behind the three brothers who were picking strawberries, and one is actually smoking a pipe with looks like a prancing dog. Actually, looks like a little pony, but in front of him. So this is life in rural Pennsylvania. These split rail fences were a quick way to put up a border to keep your animals in. There were outbuildings everywhere. If you look in the front of the house, there's a way to sharpen knives. So this shows like the activities that people were doing. There's pigs, ducks, geese, a rooster, sheep, etc. But he wrote about, I'm going to read the quote here, that Lewis Miller wrote about the three brothers. They do all the housekeeping, their own cooking and washing, spinning thread and weave on the loom, make clothing to dress, and do their own blacksmithing on a few acres of land. But they have time to pick strawberries. Doesn't that look nice? Big news, steel spikes for harrows come to Meadville. Harrows were something that you would drag behind a horse after you plowed. It would break up the large clods of dirt. You can still see them today in some places. And so on the right-hand side, steel spikes were a novelty and an invention and improved the life of farmers because they wouldn't have to repair the wooden spikes. In 1825, Henry Schreiner of Philadelphia promotes his New Orleans Victory. It's a 9-plate stove. Open hearth cooking was so laborious and dangerous. Women didn't live until 40 years old because they often caught fire. They would be too close to the fire. Their clothing would catch on fire. Children often burned by wandering into an open hearth. This was a great invention. It wasn't new, but this one was popular because it would come apart. It's 9 plates, so it came in pieces. Big plates here would be disassembled. You can see what looks like a bolt on top of a very long screw. So this was a big innovation. Toy balloons were invented. I had to say that. John Lewis Krimmel painted this scene of a barroom dancing, and again, look up at the ceiling. What do you see? Pennsylvania was a leader in American whiskey production in the 19th century with many distilleries and a mix of large and small producers. The Whiskey Rebellion of 1794 began in Washington County just south of Pittsburgh. Here's something very interesting. In 1810, the first officially known distillery begins operation in Crawford County. By 1820, look at that number, 23,688 barrels of whiskey were recorded in county records. That's a lot. In 1825, Crawford County allocates $376.98 for the education of poor children. In 1825, Cherry Ripe, thank you, Sandy, for the rendition, and thank you for the bicentennial song. Does anybody know about a song about Meadville? Is this the first?
No, there was another.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Sandy.
Yeah.
Do you have a record of that?
Dr. Holland, there was the bicentennial Dr. Wayne T. Holland wrote a
Okay.
song
Do you have a copy of that?
his son probably does.
Okay, we'll talk. Cherry Ripe, as Sandy delightfully played for us, was published in England, and it spread like wildfire. It was one of the most popular songs of 1825. And there we can see a couple dancing. And Sandy, I had a rendition of it. Oh, well, just so you'll remember, I'll play it anyway, if I can. Maybe I can't. Sandy did a better version of it anyway. Well, we're going to watch Cherry Ripe instead of listening to it. Come on. Okay, great. Okay, I'm almost done. We're going to have coffee soon. Okay, 1825, and to me this is the most significant, the Erie Canal. Not the Erie Extension, but the Erie Canal that goes from New York City to the Lake Erie opens. And this just, this changes our community drastically. The canal reduces transportation costs, it improves time for traveling, and it brings in immigrants to Crawford County. The Panic of 1825 was a global stock market crash of a sort because of overspeculation in South America. In 1825, the Treaty of Indian Springs takes place in Georgia. This is one of the many times that the Native Americans of America get screwed. The Treaty of 1825 leads to the Trail of Tears. I'm sure many of you have heard of that, where 6,000 men and women and children die during a 120-mile journey from Georgia to Oklahoma. What happened in Meadville? The three churches that Rick mentioned earlier were formed, the Episcopalian, the Methodist, and the Unitarians. The courthouse, again, is so important, like you mentioned. It's a symbol of governance, order, prosperity. We started out in the early 1800s with a log cabin. It was torn down about 1825, and the new one was built, which you can see the white one here, in 1825. So that's a big change. Look at the transition from a log cabin to a classically designed courthouse with an incredible bell. Where is that bell?
Yeah, I think it may be in the foyer as you come into the current old courthouse. The bell, I believe, is
still there.
That is the bell.
Yeah, it's there. Well, maybe when I get arrested or something, I'll get a chance to see it.
Oh, no, we're the old one. You'd be taken up to the new building.
So we could see the Victorian version of the courthouse and the new one, which I think was built about 1952 or 1953.
Yeah,
So,
it was 54.
54, okay. So a courthouse, again, is very important. It speaks volumes about our community. And the earlier versions are nice, but I think today's version is really beautiful. It's a classical style structure that I think makes our community proud. Lafayette arrives in Meadville on June 2nd in 1825. He rests and dines at the Gibson Tavern at the corner of Chestnut and Water Street. Lafayette speaks at on the steps of Bentley Hall, and he said, and this was quoted in the newspaper, "This is the loveliest valley in the world." I wish I had a nickel for every time he said that while he was in America. John Brown purchased property near Guy's Mills. His father taught him the tannery business in Hudson, Ohio, not too far from here. The top part, the wooden part, burns down in 1907. And we're going to be spending a lot of time thinking and talking about John Brown and the activities that he spawned. In the earliest years, wolves were a nuisance, raiding farmers for their calves. Crawford County paid $12 for the scalp of a full-grown wolf and $5 for a puppy wolf. So Crawford County took in $169 for that. Are there any wolves left in Crawford County? Anybody know? No? So that's it for the history. I'm going to go through our events. You've got to see this exhibit that's next door. This is my sister Janet Edmonds organized this. And it's a great, we had a big opening at 12 o'clock with the families of the students who did dishing for pie, so I hope you'll go take a look and admire their work. The French Creek Feeder Canal is a program organized by Conneaut Lake. It takes place on February 8. Dr. Dixon is speaking about Meadville Ebony Genealogy of Sorts. That's her book that came out during Meadville's bicentennial in 1988. And she identifies early African Americans in Meadville. Josh Sheretz, the director of the Crawford County Historical Society, is going to be giving a talk on Harm Jan Heidi Koper. Heidi Koper. And I think you all know who he is. Hatch Hollow is going to do an art exhibit for us. And again, this was organized by Janet, by local artists. The title is Echoes of Home, A Journey Through Family and Small Town Heritage. Janet also is organizing an art exhibit with artwork by students from the Early Learning Center. April 11, an evening of music. Thank you very much, Sandy Ball. We got to get that other song, the Meadville Bicentennial song. Yeah. The Methodist Church, their bicentennial celebration takes place on May 17th. They're having a Turin dinner. And there's going to be a sing-along, hymns through the ages, and a tour of that beautiful church across the street. Okay, this one's nice, but that one's pretty nice too. And then another celebration with the bishop coming to town the following day on Sunday the 18th with ribbon cutting and lunch. Yay! The Allegheny College is sponsoring a talk and tour on the Marquis de Lafayette. There's going to be a talk, and then Jed Miller will give a tour of Bentley Hall. The Christ Episcopal Church is doing their celebration on June 8th. Dr. Dixon has organized Juneteenth at John Brown's Tannery. What a cool idea. And this image of John Brown is actually from my childhood. It was in the state capital of Kansas in Topeka. And thanks to Chris Seeley, we're going to have an open house at the courthouse, and so we can see that bell, right? Did I get that wrong?
I'll talk to him about that. It's going to be in the assembly room, but I think coming in through the main door.
You're going to see it, okay. The Meadville Public Library has Steve Oots, and I don't know if you know who he is, but he's an architectural historian who works at Allegheny College. And he's doing an education program on architecture at the public library on July 14th. It looks like it's a 4-day program. Meadville Theological School, there'll be a meadville on that on August 2nd. A young man in high school in Chicago did the research at the Meadville Meadville Lombard School in Chicago, who have an archive and have a lot of our materials in Chicago. So it'll be interesting to see what he comes up with. On August 9th is an all churches picnic. Again, this is Dr. Dixon's dream. Everybody, there's over 61 churches in Meadville. I've heard her last say, and I think that number is growing, is it not, Dr. Dixon? Where is she? Yeah. So I think we're expecting 100,000 people at Roche Park. Heidi Cooper women were so important to Meadville, and their history is going to be revealed by art historian Marianne Berger Woods, and she's written a lot of books. And the Heidi Cooper women were here at least for 100 years after 1825. They were philanthropists and they were activists. Audubon, Dr. Brian Miller, assistant professor of history at Allegheny College, is going to be talking about Audubon on September 27th. We, the Unitarians, are going to be having a concert on October 17. We're going to have a bicentennial reception in our new Victorian parlor. So this parlor was a recent result. In fact, we're still working on it. Because thanks to Pennsylvania, we got a grant from Pennsylvania to help us restore this. This is amazing. This is the greatest documentary I've ever seen. This is a cemetery, Greendale. It was directed by Michael Keeley, who's a professor of communication at Allegheny College. Has anybody seen it? This is a cemetery. It's amazing. So he's going to be a screening of that at Allegheny. The Unitarians are going to have a bicentennial service worship on October 19th. Josh Sheretz, the director of the Crawford County Historical Society, is going to be talking about the Holland Land Company, and this is hard to say, and I think I misspelled it, at the Stereoscopic Museum. which is on Chestnut Street. So that was, you saw the earlier brick building behind Heidi Coper's mansion. So this was a newer version, looks like 1860s or 1880s. And a sing-along. Sandy is going to have a Christmas sing-along on December 6th. And that's my talk. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Dixon. Can you come up, please? I asked Dr. Dixon, what should I say to introduce you? And you said, just say I'm a devout Methodist and volunteer. How'd I do?
I didn't say that. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for sharing an afternoon with us. Since I will not have time to call the names of all the people we would like to thank, please follow me in your souvenir booklet. Dr. Holgram and Reverend Dr. Jane Ellen Nichols have masterfully taken us through a Meadville 1825 journey. Sandy Ball set the stage for us with beautiful preludes. Thank you, Commander Phil Davis and veterans of the Vietnam War. I think the weather is affecting my speech today. Post 52 for the presentation and retirement of colors. We love our country and highly value the sacrifices of our troops. We have been surrounded today by a dais representing our state, county, and local government, as well as our school district. Thank you, Mrs. Julie Piercy, and I want you to know, she is lovely. She helps us with almost everything we need help with. Mr. Joseph Galbo, I want you to know, Chris Seeley, hey, I'll tell him you did well.
Thank you.
Dr. Jennifer Galden, our superintendent, who is just doing a fabulous job, and Mrs. Mary Ann Menino, our city manager. Thank you so much. I'll be sure to tell our mayor that you did a fabulous job. So let's thank our city officials and our state officials. Miss Amy Reich, you have put the lyrics of our Meadville in our heads. And just think, the lyrics were really written by Sandy Ball and Reverend Dr. Jane Ellen Nichols, our own. So let's thank them. Mr. Tom Edmonds, the chair of Meadville 1825, certainly brought us up to date on the happenings. I think we know a lot about Meadville, don't you? Thank you, Mr. Edmonds. And you know, just behind the dais, we have a marvelous group of Meadville area senior high school students and parents who, I'm sure, when you get over there, you're going to say, what? They are the artists? They are the artists. It's a beautiful exhibit. It's called Dishing for Pie. The students are listed on the program, and I understand that there are real pies for us to sample when we get over there. So will the students stand, please, and their parents, and Mr. McCoy. And, okay. Thank you so much. Wow. Okay. I don't see Miss Edmonds. Where's Miss Edmonds, the curator? So you'll see her when you get over there. Okay. With the All Churches Committee, made up of Pastor Steve Maddox, Reverend Kendra Bellier, Kathy Maloney, Mr. Ron Maddox, Reverend Randall France and Mrs. Susan Jagamans, please stand. I tell you, we can't wait to share. Right. You know, they have been meeting for over a year now, getting ready for us to visit their churches. And they have so many incredible plans for us, so we appreciate that. Mr. Edmonds told us about the 25 presentations we may experience during the year. And I'd like to know if there are some presenters in the house today, and I think there are, will you please stand? Presenters, please stand. All right. Refer to the calendar you were given today and register early to attend each of these events. Keep up with us on Facebook at Meadville 1825 and look for news releases in the Meadville Tribune. We will also keep you posted on Armstrong Cable, Cool 101.7 FM, and 7 Mountain Medias. And I want you to know the Meadville Tribune is here today and Armstrong is here today. Let's give a big applause for them. You know, we have the best media in town for sure. The Unitarian Universalist Church Soup Squad, led by Mr. Mark McGinty, is anxiously awaiting to serve us one of their famous 1825 Meadville soups. And then they have some other things that are going along with the soup. So make sure that when you get there, because they're not here right now, they are all in the kitchen getting ready for us. But let's thank them. And we have with us Seth Ernst today. You know, this young man has been busy getting that parlor done. And I want you to know he's head of a company. You know, he graduated from Meadville area senior high school. He's just doing all kinds of things. Mr. Ernst, will you stand, please? Okay. This ambitious project started over a year ago, and we want to thank the many people involved. Unitarian Universalist Church of Meadville Board, Dr. Richard Holgren, Deb Lehman, Jane Anderson, P. Todd Fox, and Dr. Josh Surlis White. Will you stand, please? Our ushers are from the Unitarian Universalist Church and the Meadville community. They are Rich and Corinne Chafee, Angela Jones, Darrell Ernst, Kathy Maloney, and Dolly McKivens. They will also be available to show you around the parish house. Let's thank them, and will they stand, please? It is for sure that great events require sponsorships. Meadville 1825 is sponsored by Allegheny College. In fact, Allegheny College did the beautiful souvenir booklets you see today. Our Crawford County Courthouse, represented by Mr. Galbo, Crawford County Historical Society, and Crawford Heritage Community Foundation. Will our sponsors who are here today please stand? The Meadville 1825 committee members are Tom Edmonds, our fearless chair, Dr. Richard Holgram, Reverend Dr. Jane Ellen Nichols, Deb Lehman, Corinne Chafee, who's our recorder, Sandy Ball, Dr. Amelia Carr, Janet Edmonds, Kathy Maloney, and Mariana Woods. Will you stand, please? Now, will you all stand? Everybody. Thank you not just for supporting Meadville 1825, but for supporting Meadville and our state and our country, for being the guiding lights for our children and the generations to come. Let's applaud each other. You may be seated. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And I'd ask that you please rise again. We're just getting our exercise. And I'll ask the veterans of post number 52 to retire the colors.
Retrieve colors. That's all right. There. About the face. Forward. Forward.
Thank you for joining us today and making your way out on this very wintry day. It's wonderful to see you here. Please follow us on Facebook to keep track of what we're up to. And please join us next door in the Parish House for refreshments and to see the student art. Thank you.